Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's lesson on equations. So, let's start off with the definition. Equations are a mathematical expression which also contains an equal sign. Okay, so that's the definition of equations if you want to get it down. Of course, if you already have it in your notes, you are good. Okay, now, the essential idea behind an equation is that it's a scale. Yeah, it's a scale, and at all times it has to remain balanced. That means that if you go ahead and you deposit a 2 on this side, well, that makes the scale get unbalanced, because now you have 2 here and you have nothing here. You need to go ahead and you need to deposit 2 on this side as well, so that the scale can be balanced again. That's the basic idea. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other side of the equation. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other side as well. Now, this is the material you need for a brief introduction to equations. I'm going to move ahead. Feel free to pause the video if you need to. Okay. I erased some of my title there. Alright, so let's move on. So, for equations, let's start off with a series of steps that you will always do, okay? So, let's go ahead and label this small list steps. Alright. And let's forget the ruler. My computer is being extremely slow. So, steps. Step 1. You draw your scale. Always. Step 2. You eliminate the number furthest from the variable by doing its opposite. Okay, step 3. For step 3, you eliminate equally on both sides. And finally, we have step 4, which is leave the variable. Yeah, that's an R. Leave the variable alone. Okay? Now let's go ahead and try this out. So let's say for an equation, I give you 2x plus 5 equals 9. Okay? Now, the first step that I have to do is I draw out my scale. The equal sign will always be my scale. Now, I need to find out on the side of the equation that has the x. the x being my variable. Well, first of all, I want to identify the x as my variable. Okay, so on the side of the equation that has my x, which number is further away from the x? The 2 or the 5? Well, that's right, the 5. The 5 is further away. So I want to eliminate the 5 by doing its opposite. Okay, well, if I look right now, it says plus 5, right? What's the opposite of plus 5? Minus 5. So I'm going to go ahead and do minus 5. Remember, step 3 says eliminate equally on both sides. This is a scale, so if I'm doing minus 5 on the left, I have to do minus 5 on the right too. Now, let's go ahead and keep working. The 2x I didn't touch, so I can bring that down. 2x. Now, 5 minus 5, well, that's 0. I don't have to write it down. That would be silly. I bring down the equal sign, and 9 minus 5 is 4. Excellent. Now remember step 4. Step 4 is leave the variable alone. Right now, is the variable alone on this side? Of course not. Right now it has the 2 next to it. I want to get rid of the 2. Alright, so whenever you have a number and a variable that are next to each other with no sign in between them, when they are together like that, they're multiplying. So, when no sign is between a number and a variable, they are multiplying. Okay, so what's the opposite of multiplying? Yeah, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So instead of multiplying by 2, we're going to divide by 2. Remember, if I do it on the left, I have to do it on the right, both sides. 2 divided by 2 gives me 1, the invisible number. And since it's invisible, I can't spell. Since it's invisible, I don't have to write it down. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay, it's invisible. I write my x, I bring that down. I bring down the equal sign, and 4 divided by 2, well, that gives me 2. Boom. That's my answer right there. Let's do another example. Okay, so let's say I give you the equation. Let's say I do 5y plus 4 equals 29. Okay, so the first step, I draw out my scale. My second step, I eliminate the number furthest away from the variable by doing its opposite. Well, first of all, let me identify what the variable is going to be. My variable in this case is y. Which number is furthest away from y? Is it the 4 or the 5? Yeah, it's going to be the 4. So I'm going to eliminate the 4. What's the opposite of plus 4? The opposite of plus 4 is minus 4. Yeah, so I'm going to subtract 4. Now, if I'm doing it to one side of my equation, don't I have to do it to the other side as well? Yes, so I'm going to subtract 4 here as well. Okay, so, whoa, I don't know what happened. Okay, so I bring down the 5y. I haven't changed that, I haven't touched it, so I can just bring it down. 4 minus 4 becomes 0. They cancel out. Okay, I don't have to bring that down. I bring down my equal sign, and 29 minus 4 equals 25. Good, almost done. Step 4 tells me leave the variable alone. Well, as you can tell, my variable right now is not alone. It has a 5 next to it. So let's get rid of that. The 5 and the y are next to each other. There are no signs in between them. They're together. That means they must be multiplying. What's the opposite of multiply by 5? Divide by 5. So we divide by 5. We do it equally to the other side as well. 5 divided by 5 gives me the invisible number of 1. I don't need to write that down. Y equals 5. Boom, you're done. Let's do one last example really quickly just to make sure you understand it, okay? So let's do 2z plus 3 equals 15. Alright, step 1, I draw my line. Step 2, I identify my variable, and I have to find out which number is furthest away from it. Is it the 2 or is it the 3? Yep, it's the 3. So I have to do the opposite of adding by 3. What's the opposite of plus 3? Minus 3. So I'm going to subtract by 3. Step 3 tells me I have to do the same on both sides, so I'm going to subtract by 3 on the other side too. Okay, the 2z I can bring down. And then 3 minus 3 is going to be 0. I don't have to write that down. I bring down my equal sign, and 15 minus 3 is 12. Nearly done. Step 4, I have to leave the variable alone. Right now, my variable has a 2 next to it. Now, what's these two numbers, 2 and z? They're next to each other. There are no signs in between them. They must be multiplying. What's the opposite of multiply? Divide. I'm going to, instead of multiply by 2, divide by 2. I need to do the same thing on the right-hand side. Divide by 2. Okay, 2 divided by 2 gives me the invisible number of 1. Don't need to write that, I can just bring down the z. Bring down my equal sign, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. And that is the basics for equations.